If you keep asking her questions, you're slowly talking her out of feeling anything for you. And no one ever told you that the more you try to impress her, the less she feels. I'm going to tell you something most men never hear. Not because it's complicated, but because it threatens the illusion you were raised with. You were taught that if you show interest, ask thoughtful questions, and prove you're curious, she'll feel connected. That connection will grow. Attraction will follow. But attraction doesn't grow from interrogation. It grows from emotional experience. When you sit across from a woman and say, "So, what do you do? Where are you from? What do you like to do for fun?" You think you're building rapport, but what she feels is something else. She feels evaluated. She feels interviewed. She feels like she's being screened for approval. And here's the truth that stings. Interviews don't create desire. They create pressure. A woman doesn't fall for the man who extracts information from her. She leans toward the man who creates a feeling inside her. When you lead with question after question, you unconsciously put her in the role of performer. She answers, you judge, she answers again, you respond. It becomes a loop where she's working to maintain the conversation. That drains emotional energy. But when you shift from asking to sharing, from extracting to expressing, something powerful happens. Instead of, "What do?" you say, "You seem like someone who's probably balancing a million things at once. I respect that." Instead of, "Where are you from?" you say, "There's something about your energy that feels different. It's not common." Notice the difference. One demands data. The other creates emotion. Women are not attracted to your curiosity about their resume. They're attracted to your certainty about your own perception. When you speak observations instead of questions, take the lead. You communicate that you're socially aware, grounded, comfortable enough not to cling to scripted conversation patterns, and comfort is magnetic. Most men ask questions because silence scares them. Silence feels like failure. But silence is not your enemy. Insecurity is. If you pause and hold eye contact instead of scrambling for the next question, she feels the shift. That pause says, "I'm not desperate for validation. I'm not afraid of this moment." And that calm steadiness does more for attraction than 10 clever questions ever will. This doesn't mean you never ask anything. It means you stop hiding behind questions. Talk to her like you already belong in the space, like you're not auditioning, like you're choosing whether you enjoy her energy, not hoping she approves of yours. When you replace questions with statements, teasing observations, and light storytelling, she relaxes. She doesn't feel tested. She feels drawn in because now she's experiencing you, and attraction lives in experience, not information. Most men try to learn about her. The man she remembers makes her feel something about herself. That's the difference. And if you've been wondering why conversations die even though you did everything right, this is where it started. Here's the part that almost no man realizes. Women are wired to respond to emotional cues, not logical questioning. You can't outthink attraction. You feel it or you don't. And when you lead with questions, you're trying to engage her rational brain, while her emotional brain is quietly checking out. Think about this. The most memorable interactions you've ever had with someone weren't interviews. They were moments that made you feel alive, seen, or challenged. That same rule applies to women. When she talks to a man who makes her feel a spark, excitement, curiosity, or even just playful tension, she's immediately drawn in. When she talks to a man who asks, "What do?" she's thinking about how to answer. That's not attraction. That's work. This is where you pivot. You stop seeking permission through questions and start creating experiences with words, tone, and presence. For example, instead of asking her about her weekend, you make a small observation that hints at personality or story. You look like someone who probably turned Saturday into an adventure. Am I right? It's not a question seeking a factual answer. It's a statement that creates a mental picture, and she instinctively wants to confirm or tease your perception. Then, instead of asking, "Do you like movies?" you can say, "I can tell you've got a story that would make a film jealous." Notice what's happening. You're shifting the energy from interrogation to projection. You're planting a seed that her imagination takes over. She now owns part of the conversation. She's filling in details, herself, which makes the interaction feel alive, dynamic, and electric. And don't underestimate touch, micro-expressions, and pauses. When you combine statements with subtle nonverbal cues, a slight smile, leaning in just enough, mirroring her gestures, you communicate dominance and comfort without a word. You're speaking at a level her mind registers before she even hears the syllables. That's why men who think conversation is only words are missing half the game. You also have to understand the power of ambiguity. Men fear it. Women are attracted to it. When you don't clarify everything with a question, you leave space for intrigue. You hint at ideas without over-explaining. You let her curiosity work for you. Curiosity is magnetic, and most men kill it before it even starts. Think of it like this. If you were on a date with a woman and every sentence she said prompted a question from you, by the end, she'd feel like she was giving a job interview. But if you spoke in a way that made her feel admired, challenged, or amused, she would leave thinking about you all night, and she'd want to see you again. It's subtle, but it's devastatingly effective. You don't need to memorize the right questions. You need to understand human psychology at a deep level. Attraction is emotional, and your words are the vehicle for it. Questions often bypass the emotional layer entirely. Observations, stories, playful challenges, and confident statements penetrate it directly. Once you make this shift, everything else changes. Conversations flow. Silences feel comfortable. She starts leaning in. She laughs more. She mirrors your energy. And the most important part, you stop chasing validation. You stop overthinking. You become the man she's subconsciously evaluating. And she's evaluating you based on your presence, not your curiosity. Attraction isn't about curiosity. It's about resonance. Your words must resonate, not interrogate. And the men who understand this, they're not just having conversations. They're creating experiences that women remember. That's how you stop asking questions and start pulling her in. Here's the part that will make most men uncomfortable. The moment you stop asking questions, you start taking responsibility for the energy in the room. Most men assume attraction is something a woman gives them that she decides if she's interested based on how clever or curious they are. That's backward thinking. Attraction isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. Every word you speak either builds tension or diffuses it. Every pause either makes her lean in or check out. Every observation either makes her feel seen or evaluated. When you stop asking questions, you gain control over the emotional tone of the interaction. You become the conductor of her feelings rather than the student taking notes. And when she senses a man leading with emotional clarity instead of curiosity, her body reacts before her mind even realizes it. Most men never notice how much women respond to subtle storytelling. It's not about the story itself, it's about the emotion you trigger. A simple line like, "I had this wild experience last weekend that taught me more about people than any book ever could," does something that "what did you do last weekend" never will. The first line gives her a feeling. The second line asks for data. You can see the difference, right? One draws her in. One checks a box. Confidence isn't just about swagger. It's about emotional consistency. When you make statements, share stories, or drop playful observations without hesitation, you signal that you're secure in yourself. Women instinctively pick up on this. They feel it in micro-expressions, in your cadence, in how you handle pauses. When you lead emotionally, it's magnetic. When you lead with questions, it's transparent, and she knows you're seeking approval. Now, let's talk about teasing. Most men underestimate the power of playful challenges. A light, clever tease works like a magnet because it creates an emotional reaction. It's not mean, it's engaging. I can tell you're competitive, you're just pretending to be calm. Delivered with a smirk triggers curiosity, amusement, and even a spark of tension. She suddenly wants to prove herself, but she's enjoying the game. Questions rarely produce that energy. Statements do, observations do, teases do. Here's another psychological truth most men never hear. Women love a man who makes them think about themselves without them realizing he did it. When you stop asking direct questions and start making clever observations or storytelling statements, she begins reflecting on her own experiences in relation to yours. She fills in the gaps. She imagines herself in your world. That mental projection is pure attraction. Questions never create projection. They create answers, and answers are boring. Attraction is like electricity. You either conduct it or you resist it. Most men resist by trying too hard to understand her. But the man who sparks electricity doesn't need to understand. He creates an emotional reaction first, and understanding comes later, if it ever matters at all. You've got to stop chasing permission to exist in the conversation. You exist, she responds. Period. And here's the secret weapon: unpredictability. When you don't rely on scripted questions, you introduce subtle unpredictability. Your energy, your statements, your pauses, they keep her off balance in the best possible way. She doesn't know exactly what you'll say next, and her mind starts chasing you. That's psychological pull. That's pure attraction. It's why men who stop asking questions suddenly become unforgettable. The moment you internalize this, you stop worrying about saying the right thing. You stop asking yourself, am I asking enough? You start observing, feeling, and expressing. You start giving her experiences instead of interrogations. And when she experiences you this way, she begins to lean in. She begins to care. She begins to want more. Not because you questioned her, but because you made her feel alive in the conversation. This is the difference between men who are memorable and men who are forgettable. The question askers fade. The men who speak, tease, observe, and lead emotionally, they leave a mark that no number of questions could ever produce. Now, let's get into something most men don't even think about: emotional layering. Every conversation has multiple layers, but most men stay on the surface because questions keep them there. What's your favorite movie? Do you like traveling? Those are surface level, safe, predictable. Questions keep her thinking, but they rarely make her feel. If you want her attention, her real attention, you need to operate on a deeper level. When you speak with statements, observations, or teasing stories, you begin creating an emotional landscape she steps into. She doesn't just hear words, she feels them. Imagine saying, "You strike me as someone who doesn't settle for ordinary." I like that. That sentence does 3 things. It acknowledges her uniqueness, communicates your values, and plants a subtle challenge, all without asking for a single answer. She immediately starts processing. Does he really mean that? Do I live up to that? That mental engagement, that's where desire starts. Most men never realize how much attraction is about emotional contrast. If she's calm and reserved, you bring energy. If she's bold, you bring grounded intensity. If she's playful, you bring challenge. Questions flatten the emotional curve. They make you predictable, safe, and boring. Statements and observations curve the emotional field, creating highs and lows, pushing her feelings in directions that pull her closer to you. Then there's the power of self-revealing stories. Men fear vulnerability, but not in the way you think. You don't have to confess your life story. You reveal just enough to create an emotional echo. A small story about a challenge you overcame, a lesson you learned, or even a funny, embarrassing moment works wonders. When done subtly, it positions you as human, confident, and interesting. And it invites her to share reflections of herself without you needing to ask. That's how you pull her in psychologically, not interrogationally. Timing is everything. Statements must breathe. You pause, observe her reaction, adjust your energy, then continue. Every pause gives her a moment to process emotionally. If you rush to fill space with questions, you rob her of emotional digestion. She doesn't feel you, she answers you. Attraction requires space. Questions require urgency. Big difference. You also need to understand the magnetic effect of selective attention. Notice her patterns, gestures, or expressions. Then comment, but don't ask. For instance, I see that sparkle in your eyes when you talk about things you love. That's rare. Or, you have this calm energy, but I can tell there's fire underneath. You're noticing, you're connecting, and you're conveying awareness without interrogating. She feels seen, and that's addictive. Another key point, intrigue. Most men over-explain. I'm interested because I like learning about you. Yawn. Instead, leave breadcrumbs. Hint at stories, experiences, or opinions. Let her curiosity fill in the gaps. Curiosity is magnetic. Questions are controlling. One invites her to explore you. The other asks her to reveal herself. Only one sparks desire and hears a subtle psychological truth. Women subconsciously assess emotional leadership. If you lead with statements, observations, and energy, she relaxes, leans in, and begins testing you subtly. If you lead with questions, she tests your patience, endurance, and validation-seeking tendencies. You become an interviewee, not an experience. That subtle shift alone determines if she's drawn or indifferent. By now, you can see the difference between a conversation that fizzles and one that ignites. It's not just words, it's energy, it's emotional layering, it's presence. You're no longer asking for permission to exist in her world. You're guiding her through yours. And once you master this, every interaction becomes a subtle dance of attraction, curiosity, and desire. And you never have to rely on questions again. Now, here's the final truth most men will never admit to themselves. Attraction is not built on information. It's built on emotional momentum. Every question you ask resets the momentum. Every statement, observation, or playful tease builds it. You need her emotionally moving toward you, not checking off a mental list. When you master this, you stop being just another guy in the crowd. You become unforgettable. The most powerful men in social dynamics don't need scripts, formulas, or canned questions. They operate on instinct, sharpened by understanding human psychology. They speak in ways that create emotional resonance first, meaning second. They give experiences before answers, and women sense this immediately. It's magnetic, undeniable and impossible to fake. Think about the last time you had a conversation that left you smiling long after it ended. Was it because someone asked clever questions? Or was it because they made you feel alive, challenged, or seen in a way that surprised you? That same principle applies in attraction. Women are no different. Except most men don't realize that their default behavior of asking questions is the exact opposite of what creates that spark. Here's what to do instead. Speak in ways that create curiosity, amusement, or intrigue. Make observations that spark internal reflection. Drop light challenges that tease without offending. Share stories that hint at depth and experience. And most importantly, cultivate presence. The kind of presence that makes her feel like she's stepping into an experience rather than filling out a questionnaire. You also have to embrace a subtle tension, the kind that keeps her engaged without pressure. Men often overcompensate by asking questions to keep her talking. But the truth is that controlled silence, confident statements, and playful ambiguity pull her in far more effectively. She begins leaning toward you emotionally, mentally, and even physically, all without a single interrogation. Now, let's tie it all together with a mindset shift. You are not there to extract information from her. You are there to offer an experience she remembers. Her responses are secondary. Her attraction is the outcome of the emotional environment you create, not the answers she gives. And once you internalize that, your conversations transform from draining interviews into magnetic interactions that leave women thinking about you long after you part. This doesn't mean you never show interest. It means you show it differently. Observing, teasing, storytelling, mirroring, and energy control communicate far more than endless "what do you do" questions. You become a presence she gravitates toward, not a checklist she completes. That shift alone separates men who fade from men who linger in memory. And here's the ultimate challenge for you. Apply this immediately. Stop asking questions. Begin observing, teasing, and expressing your perceptions. Lead emotionally, not interrogationally. Notice how she responds. Adjust your energy. Build tension. Create curiosity. Invite her imagination into your world. Do this consistently, and you'll stop chasing attraction. You'll embody it. Before we finish, here's something for you. Imagine you're on a date, and instead of asking questions, you make 3 strong observations about her energy, her behavior, and her presence. How many of those observations do you think would make her lean in closer? And why? Comment your answer below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to hear.